Hello and welcome. I hope that you are having a fantastic day today. We're going to talk about Bitcoin news today. Now, in 3 years, if you had bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin and held it and did nothing for 3 years, it would have become $7,206. Now, this is a piece of Bitcoin history, but it's actually current history, because if you had bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin on January 1st, 2017. Now, this is 9 months, actually no, 11 months before Bitcoin hit its previous all-time high, and still it was still below the all-time high by quite a bit. And then sold it on December 31st, 2019, which was just this last December, not long ago. You would have made $7,206. So what we're learning here, and what we're going to find out as we dig into this, is throughout the history of Bitcoin, if you bought some Bitcoin, held it for 3 years, and then sold it, you would have been profitable. Let's take a deeper dive into this. So, should I buy Bitcoin now or should I wait? We're going to give you ideas that'll help you take profits and avoid losses. Can we get this video to 99 likes? Smash the like button. It really makes a huge difference. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. This is my opinion. In fact, my background, instead of being in finance, is actually in computer software. For 20 years, I have been a software engineer, and I've also done web development. Now, cryptocurrency involves substantial risk of loss. And what we want to do is we want to avoid that risk. Now, this disclaimer gives you some great information about investing in cryptocurrency. It really gives you a good warning, and I would strongly recommend that you heed this warning and take appropriate action for your situation based on this information as far as a disclaimer. Because the last thing you want to do is hurt your finances for your family or for yourself. The most important thing we're trying to do is actually find a way to leverage, find a way to get a bit of an edge, find a way to get ahead and actually make some money. Now, one of the things that is really important that we're going to look in this video at the history of Bitcoin. And you do need to understand that past results are no indication of future performance. In other words, just because Bitcoin behaved this way in its history doesn't mean it will behave this way in its future. And so you need to know that up front. But we also want to use history to learn so that we have a better understanding of what could happen in the future, as well as always looking out for things that are kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't have a good word for it, but all of a sudden history is going straight down this path, and then it takes a left turn or it takes a sudden right turn. So something can happen that will make a dramatic difference that is outside of the norm. The pandemic is a good example of that. And a lot of people have been speculating how the pandemic is actually going to be favorable for Bitcoin. Now, time will tell. I tend to lean in that direction. But you know what? If you listen to me at all, if you watch any of my videos, it becomes really clear, really fast, that I have a positive outlook for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency as a whole. And I just tend to look at it that way from no matter what. And so I'm trying to let you know my bias up front so that you can use that and weigh that against other information that you learn, because you should always do your own research before you invest in any investment. All right, so here's this price chart. Now, if you've been watching my videos for the last week and a half, you've seen this chart over and over. But today we're going to take a deeper dive into it, because this chart really is very valuable. And so what we're looking at in this chart is if you took $1,000 and bought Bitcoin and held that $1,000 for 3 years, historically, what would have happened to your money? And so we start with January 1, 2017, And then 3 years later, it's December 31st, 2019. And we can see by the chart that we would have made $7,206 with that investment. Now, if we continue to go back from 2016, 2015, 14, 13, 12, and 11, we can see that those numbers vary quite a bit. Some years we made a great profit. Some years we made a modest profit. Now let's address this year, because this is the year where you made the least amount of money. Here you only made $1,180 in a 3-year period. In fact, that's not what you made. You started out with $1,000, and then when you sold it, you got back $1,180. So really, you only made $180. But that's 18%. And when you look at the stock market, if you made 18% over a 3-year period, oftentimes that's actually better than the S&P 500. There are plenty of years, plenty of examples during a 3-year period where the S&P was averaging around 6%, 7%, somewhere in that ballpark. And so that 3-year return from the stock market would have been about 18%. And so now and there's plenty of examples. Now, don't get me wrong. There's plenty of years where that 18% would have been not as good as the stock market. So don't get me wrong there. I'm not trying to say that this is spectacular performance, but I am trying to point out that the worst performance throughout Bitcoin's history still did show a profit, even though it was a modest one. Now, these other numbers are pretty radical. I mean, taking $1,000 and getting $43,984 back is quite substantial. But if we look at what happened here, this is from January 1, 2015 to December 31st, 2017. And what's actually happening is Bitcoin hit its last peak of $20,000 on December 15th of 2017. And so if you had sold it just a few weeks after it hit the all-time high of $20,000, after holding it for 3 years, you would have made $43,984. And so we're coming up to another similar event. You know, these all-time highs seem to be triggered. If you look throughout history of Bitcoin and you start looking at some charts, you'll see that Bitcoin has a halvening, and then 12 to 24 months after the halvening, it hits a new all-time high. And those all-time highs are in many cases extremely dramatic, and that's what was driving this price here, was that previous all-time high. Now, because we just had a halving a few weeks ago, where the miners are making half as much as they made the day before. Every 4 years approximately, miners get their income cut in half. And so the only way for miners to continue to survive is for the price of Bitcoin to go up. And by Bitcoin becoming scarcer and scarcer and scarcer, that is what has driven its price in the previous, over the last 10 years. It's the scarcity of Bitcoin that was a big factor in driving its price up. Another big factor has been public adoption of Bitcoin. And so we've seen tremendous growth, but I don't think we've seen anything yet. And so you can see that the biggest all-time high is if you bought Bitcoin on January 1, 2011, and then sold it December 31st, 2013. And that would have returned you a whopping $2,686,000 and 466. So this was the period of time from when Bitcoin was first beginning until the next 3 years later. And we can see that some of the biggest growth for Bitcoin was in those early years from 2011 all the way into 2015. Now, those were years where we saw some pretty dramatic growth. But is it possible that we're going to see similar dramatic growth in the future? It definitely is possible, because right now in the world there's only about and I'm trying to remember some of the different numbers because everybody gives kind of slightly different numbers, but there's somewhere between 30 and 50 million Bitcoin addresses that are actually looks like held by different people. And so on the high side, we have 50 million people involved that actually own Bitcoin. On the low side, we're looking in the 20s or 30s because somebody can have multiple Bitcoin addresses, and it's hard to tell which address belongs to what person, and especially if that person has 5 or 10 different addresses, then that's kind of hard to identify. And so if we take those numbers, even the 50 million, those are small numbers. Look at how many people are in the United States. You have 320 million people in the US alone, but you have hundreds of billions, not hundreds of billions, but you have billions of people on the planet. India has 1.3 billion people. China has 1.4 billion people. And both India and China are growing more and more crypto friendly. China is in the process of creating their own digital yuan, which is their fiat currency. And China is about to introduce a digital currency to its entire population. And with that happening, that spurs the Chinese population to consider Bitcoin in a different way and consider cryptocurrency, and gives them an on-ramp that will make it easier for them to purchase cryptocurrency. And so we could see a growing portion of the Chinese population actually purchasing Bitcoin. And if that happens just to a small degree, we could go back to where we're seeing numbers like these larger numbers. Now, I'm giving you my opinion. This is not financial advice, but it doesn't take, with countries with 1.3 billion people, it doesn't take a huge percentage of them purchasing Bitcoin to significantly impact the price. And with several of the things that are happening in China, we could see something like that. Also, when you look at India, currently in India, you have 1.3 billion people in India. And right now, the Indian Supreme Court has opened the doors for cryptocurrency. Prior to April, I think it was April of this year, it was about 6, 8, 10 weeks ago, the Supreme Court in India came out and said, look, bank regulators, you have overexceeded your boundaries in trying to quash cryptocurrency. Bank regulators were not allowing banks to do business with any cryptocurrency company. And it forced most of the cryptocurrency companies. That happened back in 2018. So it forced existing cryptocurrency companies to flee India and set up operations in other countries. Well, a few weeks ago, the Indian Supreme Court came out and said, hey, you've gone too far. This was wrong. You didn't have the authority to do that. And so we're overturning what you have done. And as a result, the cryptocurrency exchanges that existed in India and still are quote unquote an India cryptocurrency exchange now have the ability to help their customers hook up their bank accounts directly to the cryptocurrency exchange. And so it's opening up the cryptocurrency market to a 1.3 billion population. And so with an influx, one of the things that these exchanges require is that you have a smartphone. Well, today in India, there's over 400 million people with smartphones. And so a large portion of the Indian population already has what they need in order to access the exchanges and to be able to buy and sell cryptocurrency. And so it wouldn't take a huge influx of Indians, people who live in India, to actually dramatically change the prices of Bitcoin and the entire cryptocurrency market. And so just those two things alone could cause a flood in the cryptocurrency market. But if we look at other factors, such as institutional money, institutional money is huge. When you look at where the wealth is in the world, a large portion of the wealth is in institutions. It's in hedge funds and family offices and other organizations that are managing trillions of dollars of assets. And if they start taking those trillions of dollars and buying Bitcoin, that will also completely disrupt the industry. And so while we're in a position now where we're seeing what could be 0.5% or a 0.25% of the future total number of people, number of assets, number of dollars involved in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, as it goes from that less than 1% all the way up to 60% or 80% or 90%, as it begins to capture more and more of that market that's out there for it to capture, we could see much faster growth than we've ever seen in the history of cryptocurrency. And if we see faster growth than we've ever seen in the history of cryptocurrency, then we might see numbers that dwarf what we're seeing here in a 3-year period. And we could see a massive influx of investment that happens much faster than what we've ever seen with any other investment. Now, one of the things that also will drive this is the scarcity of Bitcoin. Right now, there's a lot of news articles out there about how exchanges are the amount of Bitcoin and the amount of cryptocurrency that's actually stored on exchanges is going down. It's getting less and less. And the reason why is because people are buying Bitcoin and then withdrawing it from the exchange and putting it into an address they own. And then the exchanges haven't been able to replace that with a fresh supply of Bitcoin. And so while people, the number of Bitcoin addresses that have been holding Bitcoin for a year or more, it has been on a dramatic increase. And if that continues to increase, then that means that there's less and less Bitcoin available for people to trade. And when there's less Bitcoin available to be bought and sold on the exchanges, all that does is drive the price up. And so I've given you about 4 or 5 different really strong reasons why we could see similar gains to some of the biggest gains we've seen in the last 10 years of Bitcoin, like this one here at $43,984, and this one here at $32,000, this one at $60,000. I mean, that would be life-changing for most people I know to invest $1,000 and 3 years later it's worth $60,000. Depending on where you live, that might buy you a house, or it might buy you a large portion of a house. And so anyway, that's all I really wanted to share. I have a lot more I could share, but I've taken up, that's enough for one day. I've taken up too much of your time already. If you liked what I've said, if you like what we're talking about, if you have any interest, please like this video, because that helps me know that you're interested in what we talked about. Also, how can I be of service to you? Do you have any questions, thoughts, comments? Leave them in the comment section below. I would love to hear from you, even if you disagree with me. Share your polite disagreements in the comment section. And look, I don't know everything. You know things I don't know. I know things you don't know. And when we share what we know together, we're going to grow smarter together. I want to grow smarter together with you. So I hope you'll share your comments in the comment section. In the meantime, do me a favor and have a fantastic day.